After my husband's death, I said nothing about the fact that he had quietly transferred every single share of his company, Aurora Botanics, to me alone. At the memorial tea on the 40th day, my son Rohan leaned in with a smirk and whispered, "Mom, the keys are mine now. Your new job can be scrubbing the executive washroom if you still want to feel useful." He had no idea what was waiting for him at the office the very next morning. They say on the 40th day, the soul finally turns its back on the earthly world and leaves forever. That afternoon, in the drawing room of our old hillside estate outside Ity, I sat wrapped in cashmere, feeling as if it were my own soul preparing to follow Vijay Malhotra, my husband of 42 years, the founder of Aurora Botanics, the company that supplied the finest essential oils, adders, and herbal extracts to half the luxury houses in Paris, Kyoto, and Grasse. The house was full of people, soft voices, the faint clink of bone china cups, the heavy sweetness of tuberose garlands mixed with the smoke of sandalwood incense. Everything was perfect, exactly as it should be for a man of Vijay Malhotra's stature. From the outside, I must have looked like the grieving center of the ritual. In truth, I was behind glass, watching a silent play. Everyone who approached said the same words. "Ananya, be strong. Vijayji built an empire. What a loss." I nodded, thanked them, forced something that passed for a smile. Their eyes slid over me. They saw only the elegant accessory, the woman who had arranged perfect dinner parties for 4 decades, who knew which roses lasted longest in the mountain air, who made sure every guest's teacup was refilled before it was half empty. None of them knew that it was under those very dinner tables, between the clink of silver and the crackle of pine log fires, that the real contracts were sealed, that it was I who spent hours on the phone with distillers in Kannauj, rose growers in Bulgaria, sandalwood traders in Mysore, not talking business, but about their daughters' weddings, their fathers' illnesses, the monsoon that failed or came too hard. Vijay used to call it the invisible glue. He would say, "I lay the bricks, Ananya. You make it a home. Without you, it's only stone." Now the house felt hollow. In my lap lay a thin, dark green leather folder I had not let out of my hands since the family lawyer placed it there 3 days earlier. "This is Vijayji's last instruction," he had said quietly. "Only after the public will has been read." The public will was simple and predictable. The Ity estate, the Bombay apartment, the investment portfolios, everything divided between Rohan and me. The company was not mentioned at all. Everything that truly mattered was in this folder. I already knew what it said. I had read it once in the lawyer's office and had not opened it again. 100% of Aurora Botanics now belonged to me alone. Vijay's final act of trust. I ran my fingers over the embossed cover and tried not to think of a future written on those pages. Poor Ananya, I heard 2 women murmur near the fireplace. Vijay handled everything. She was just the wife. I was not offended. They were only saying what everyone believed. What my own son believed. I found Rohan across the room, already performing. He stood at the center of a circle of senior executives, gesturing with the confident energy of a man who had waited his whole life for this day. The way he adjusted his cufflinks, the condescending pat on the shoulder he gave our CFO, Deepak Mehra, everything about him screamed tomorrow he would sit in his father's chair. My chest tightened, not with grief this time, but with something colder. Vijay had loved his son, but he had never been blind. "He has my ambition, Ananya," he once told me in the quiet of his study, "but none of your heart. He sees profit margins, not people. One day that will ruin him." Rohan caught my gaze and excused himself. Deepak Mehra trailed behind him like a shadow. "Mom." He stopped in front of me, blocking the light. His voice had a new metallic edge. "We need to talk." He didn't wait for an answer. He steered me toward the long table laden with the very products his father had spent a lifetime perfecting. Tiny vials of oud, jasmine attar, vetiver water, rose hydrosol, everything that carried the soul of Aurora. "I've decided," he said, popping a cardamom-scented Madeline into his mouth without tasting it. "Tomorrow I take over officially. Dad's office is mine. You'll clear out his things and yours. I'll be hosting investors here. You'll move to the Bombay flat. It's cozier, just right for one person." He said it lightly, as if rearranging furniture, as if he were not evicting me from the only home our family had known for 4 decades. I said nothing. He mistook my silence for surrender. And don't worry about money. You'll have a pension. He looked me up and down, a flash of contempt in his eyes. Staying busy is good at your age. You can start with keeping my private washroom spotless. The words were quiet, almost intimate, but they carried pure venom. In that moment, the noise of the room vanished. The grief that had weighed on me for 40 days did not lift. It simply froze, encased in ice. Before me stood not my son, but a stranger who had just trampled on everything VJ and I had built. I turned and walked away without a word. I went upstairs, closed the bedroom door, and waited until the last car left the gravel drive and the house fell silent. Only then did I go down to VJ's study. The room still smelled of him. Sandalwood, old books, Darjeeling tea. I sank into his leather chair. It was still warm from memory. Aurora Botanics was never a factory. It was a living family that stretched from the rose fields of Bulgaria to the sandalwood forests of Karnataka, from the jasmine pickers of Madurai to the distillers of Kannauj. People who had worked with us for generations because a handshake with Vijay Malhotra was worth more than any legal clause. Rohan thought a company was buildings and balance sheets. He was about to learn otherwise. I opened the bottom drawer and took out my private notebook, not the one with contracts, but the one with mothers' birthdays, grandchildren's names, hospital room numbers, the small human details that money cannot buy. I started dialing. First, Maria Ivanova in Bulgaria, whose family had supplied our Damascena rose oil for 38 years. Then Arjun Chettiar in Kannauj, whose grandfather taught Vijay the art of copper still distillation. Then Claude Moreau in Grasse, who still signed every batch of Narrally with his own hand. To each I said the same thing quietly. There is a change in leadership. My son is taking the helm. I simply wanted to thank you for the years of friendship and to say goodbye. Every one of them understood what was not spoken. Every one of them answered the same. Madam Ananya, our loyalty was never to paper. It was to you and Vijayji. We will not forget. The web I had woven for 4 decades with threads of kindness was stronger than any contract Rohan could tear up. The next morning, Rohan walked into the office certain it was the first day of his empire. I was not there to see it, but I can picture every second. He strode past the fragrance wall where hundreds of glass vials glowed amber and green, past the portrait of his father that had hung above the fireplace for 20 years. He took it down without ceremony and leaned it face to the wall in a corner. In its place he hung a large, airbrushed photograph of himself, teeth bright, eyes cold. Deepak Mehra followed him in, stooping with rehearsed humility. Deepak, Rohan said, spinning the leather chair once like a boy, time to modernize. These old suppliers have been fleecing us for decades behind talk of tradition and craft. Send them all the same email today. New management, new terms, 25% price cut across the board, effective immediately. If they don't like it, we'll find someone who will. Deepak hesitated only a moment, then smiled the smile of a man who smells a bonus. Brilliant, sir. I'll draft it at once. That afternoon, a single, cold, corporate email went out to every master distiller, grower, and artisan who had trusted us for generations. 24 hours later, the replies began, or rather, the silence began. No anger, no negotiation. Only silence. In Rohan's world, silence meant surrender. He and Deepak toasted with 25-year-old single malt, convinced they had won. They were wrong. 3 days later, the first ship turned around in the Arabian Sea. Then another off Marseille. Then a third still in Southampton docks. In Rohan's world, silence meant surrender. He and Deepak toasted with 25-year-old single malt, convinced they had won. They were wrong. Every port authority received the same terse notice: termination of all supply contracts with Aurora Botanics, effective immediately. Cargoes already en route were being returned at sender's expense. By the 5th day, the warehouse in Mumbai was a ghost yard. The fragrance wall that once shimmered with 1,000 hues now looked like a museum of empty bottles. That same week, Deepak Mehra received a quiet visit from the legal team of a faceless conglomerate called Apex Global. the company that bought heritage brands, stripped their soul, and sold synthetic copies under the old names. Apex wanted confirmation that all exclusive supplier contracts would survive a change of ownership. Because Rohan and Deepak had already been negotiating to sell Aurora Botanics, lock, stock, and legacy to the highest bidder for a price that would make them obscenely rich and turn Vijay's life work into perfumed dish soap. I learned of it when Maria Ivanova called me in tears, then Arjun Chettiar, then Claude. The web carried the news faster than any lawyer could. I did not shout. I did not threaten. I simply asked my friends to wait. 1 week later, Rohan stood at the head of a glass boardroom in Mumbai, presenting to 3 expressionless men from Apex Global. Charts flashed, cost optimization, margin growth, synergies. And thanks to our new, aggressive procurement policy, he crowed, we have already secured a projected 25% reduction in raw material costs this quarter alone. His phone buzzed. Warehouse manager. He killed the call. 3 days later, the first ship turned around in the Arabian Sea, then another off Marseille, then a third still in Southampton docks. It buzzed again. He killed it again. The door burst open. The warehouse manager, still in his dusty uniform, stood panting. Sir, all the ships, every container, they're gone. Everything is cancelled. We have nothing left to sell. The Apex men closed their laptops in perfect unison. One of them spoke without looking at Rohan. Gentlemen, it appears the asset no longer exists. They left without another word. That evening, 2 cars tore up the mountain road to Uti, tires screaming. I was in the rose garden at dusk, deadheading the last of the season's blooms. The air smelled of wet earth and damask rose. I heard them before I saw them. Mom, Rohan's voice cracked across the lawn. What did you do? I turned slowly. Deepak was behind him, trying and failing to look composed. All the suppliers walked away, Rohan shouted. Everything is destroyed. Fix it. Call them. No. I snipped one final faded rose and placed it in my basket. I didn't ask them to leave, Rohan, I said quietly. I simply told them the truth, that the Aurora they knew no longer existed, and that you were planning to sell their life's work, and your father's, to Apex Global. The color drained from both their faces. Deepak recovered first. He pulled out a document, voice trembling with false urgency. Ananya ji, thank heavens you know. We were trying to save the company. Your husband left hidden debts, cash flow crises. We had no choice. I reached into my basket and took out the dark green leather folder. Perhaps you mean these papers? I asked. Deepak took it with shaking hands. He read. His knees buckled slightly. Rohan read over his shoulder. I watched the arrogance, the triumph, the cruelty, everything drain out of my son's face, leaving only a lost boy. 2 pages. Clear, notarist, unbreakable. Upon the death of Vijay Malhotra, 100% of Aurora Botanics passed irrevocably to his wife, Ananya Malhotra. I took the folder back. My place, I said, voice steady as the mountains around us, is not cleaning your washroom. My place is at the head of the table your father built. You are both relieved of your duties, effective immediately. You have 1 hour to remove your personal belongings from my company. After that, the gates will be locked. I turned back to the roses. Behind me I heard a choked sound, then hurried footsteps, car doors slamming, tires spitting gravel as they fled down the hill forever. The next morning, I walked into the office for the first time as owner and chairperson. I took Vijay's portrait from the corner, wiped the dust from the frame with my own hands, and hung it back in its place. Then I flew, not to sign contracts, but to drink tea with Maria in Bulgaria, to walk the jasmine fields with Arjun's daughter in Madurai, to have dinner under the stars with Claude in Grosse Pointe. 6 months later, we launched a new oil, a blend of Bulgarian rose, Mysore sandalwood, and Madagascar ylang ylang, warm, deep, unbreakable. We named it simply Ananya. When the first bottle was uncorked in the tasting room and the fragrance filled the air, Maria raised her glass and said softly, Vijay is smiling today. And for the first time in a long while, I knew he was. I had not only saved his company, I had saved its soul. And I had finally found my own place, not behind my husband, Not beside my son, but exactly where I had always belonged, at the heart of the fragrance that will carry our names long after we are gone.